So today I'm walking you through my entire picture book illustration career, book by book. Let's go! Hello everyone! Welcome to Our Business with Ness. I'm Ness and I'm a professional illustrator. Today we're having a really nice, relaxed, chatty video. I'm going to be telling you about my whole picture book illustration career to date. I'm going to tell you how I got started in this industry, all the mistakes that I made along the way, and we're going over all of my books one by one. So if you too are aspiring to become a picture book illustrator one day, I think you'll find this video very helpful to see how a typical career trajectory usually goes. But right before we jump into it, if you're new here and you would like to see more videos like this, then don't hesitate to click the subscribe button and also hit that little bell. The bell sends you a notification every single time I upload a new video. This way you're sure that you won't miss any of the advice. Alright, let's jump into it. Alright, so when I first decided that I wanted to go into picture book illustration, at the time I was working full-time at a mobile game studio as an illustrator and 2D animator. So this was the spring of 2018, and I told them that I would quit my job by July of that same year, which left me a few months to get everything started. And honestly, I thought that would be more than enough time. I was pretty overconfident. I had been through animation school and gotten a job right out of college. I had been working at that job for 3 years and had been doing pretty well for myself there, getting promotion after promotion. So I was feeling pretty good as a professional illustrator and thought that this would be easy peasy. But boy, I was so wrong. Turns out freelance illustration is completely different than a studio job, and picture book illustration is completely different than game illustration. But I didn't know any of that, so I went about it all wrong. I just gathered my best illustrations and sent them to all the major publishers and illustration agents. But that was a major disaster. I sent over 200 emails and I didn't get a single positive response. I pretty much wasted months of my time. And that's really when I realized there's more to this freelance illustration thing than I thought. As a freelance artist, you need to be able to market yourself, which I never had to do as a studio artist, and I was not good at it. It was a rude awakening, especially since when I realized that it was already the summer and I had said that I would quit my job and I was moving to another city, so I had to figure it out like now. So at first I survived by taking some contract remote work with some local studios while I was trying to learn about how to do this freelance thing. I asked for a lot of advice and I did several portfolio reviews to really understand what I was doing wrong and improve my portfolio and my chances. This was a big learning experience. There were a ton of things that were required in picture book illustrations that I had never even considered before. So with that advice I got, I completely revamped my portfolio over the next few months. And the funny thing is, I didn't improve my drawing skills at all in that period. My drawing skills stayed the same. It was all about the content that I put in my portfolio strategy, basically. That's what I improved, and the difference was really night and day. So in the fall of 2018, I started sending that new portfolio to publishers again, and this time I started getting some hits. I had some small contracts here and there, but it was really encouraging. Finally, I was getting somewhere. But I was still having trouble getting the attention of picture book publishers, which is really what I wanted, right? I wanted picture book deals. But this is very difficult to get. A book deal is a big project. It involves a lot of money, and a lot of publishers, they're really reluctant to trust a newcomer that has no experience doing books. Now I know that there are several things that I could have done at the time to earn their trust without having to have experience prior, but I didn't know this at the time. I wasn't having any luck with the major publishers. They weren't giving me the time of day. So I decided to switch my strategy and go local, reach out smaller publishers in my local area. And in the end, that's what got me my start. In December of 2018, I got a reply from a small publisher in Quebec and they offered me a book deal. Now the problem though with small publishers is that they are small, right? They distribute their books in small quantities so they don't make as much profit. In turn, this means that very often their budgets are quite limited, right? So the book deal that they offered me was for 24 pages and they only had $2,500 for the whole thing, which was really quite low. Keep in mind, the average budget for a beginner illustration for 24 pages is more along the line of $6,000 to $8,000 for a beginner. So it can be a lot more with an experienced illustrator or a big distribution. So $2,500, that was quite bad. But I was really desperate for the experience and I was interested in the script. I really wanted this book. So in the end, I accepted, and this was my first book deal. So this was my debut book, Little Panda, It's Too Unfair. It's in French. So I got this book deal at the very end of 2018 and I was working on it in the beginning of 2019. And there were a lot of great things about this project and also some things that were not quite as great. I really enjoyed working on this book. The concept was really fun. The concept was all about color. So every single spread was a different color scheme. This one, for instance, was the white/gray. This was pink, let's see, yellow. I had so much fun coming up with ways to balance every single spread, doing all the color tests. It was really a great project to work on. And they also did give me a lot of creative freedom. They had some suggestions here and there, but mostly they let me do whatever I wanted, which was amazing. However, on the downside, this was also one of the busiest time of my life. This book took me about 3 months of full-time work to do, but $2,500 doesn't cover my expenses for 3 months. So I had to take other work at the same time to cover my actual living expenses. So during that time, I was working pretty much all the time, 24/7, around the clock, to finish this book and also eat and pay my rent. It was really overwhelming and stressful, and as much fun as I had, when the project was over, it was quite a relief. This project did give me a lot of great experience though, not only to put in my portfolio, but just experience working with a publisher. I'm actually really thankful that my first project ever wasn't with an author, but with an actual publisher, with art directors, graphic designers, and people who really know what they were doing, because they showed me the rope. And that's what I would suggest to any beginner illustrator, to start with a publisher. What they taught me was really invaluable, and in the end, I'm still really glad that I took this project despite everything. After we were finished with that project, immediately after, the same publisher offered me another book. So on the one hand, I was really happy that they were trusting me with another book so soon after the first. It meant that they liked working with me. But then also, their budgets didn't magically increase between the first and the second book. In fact, this project was paid even lower than the first. And that's because it was this book, tiny little thing. It's actually the same amount of pages as the Panda book, 24 pages, but because it's so small, the cover price is lower. This book is only $5.95, whereas the Panda book was something like $12, $14. If the cover price is lower, they make less profit, which means even less of a budget. Even though, 24 pages, same amount of work for me. This book is about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, so it's a Christmas themed book, and I adore everything to do with Christmas. Ever since they offered me this, I was like, oh, I really want to do it. It was really not paid that well though, but I weighed in the pros and the cons. I thought, a Christmas book would be really nice to add to my portfolio. I would have 2 books with the same publisher. It would look really good. It would be a bit more experience. Even though it's not paid that well, it's another contract. In the end, I decided to take it. I was able to negotiate the scope a little bit though. I told them point blank, this is gonna be a lot of work for less money. Is there any way that I can reduce the scope? Cut corners, basically. I told them straight on, I was honest. Can I cut corners on this? Make this simpler, make sure that we can do this in less time. And they were okay with this. This was a cheap little book for them. It wasn't one of their major projects, and they were okay with me trying to do this, cutting corners. And so that's what we did. And it was actually a very fun challenge. I'm filming another video today where I'm going to explain everything that I did in this book to be able to do it in just 1 month instead of 3 months. Even though it's the same amount of pages. And it did turn out quite cool anyway, and so I'm going to share all of my time-saving tips in that other video. But for right now, suffice to say that after this project, I now had 2 professionally published books in my portfolio, and I was ready to move on to bigger and better things and leave small publishers behind. So now that I had some experience and some books to show in my portfolio, I immediately started seeing much better results with bigger publishers. And during that time, I had also improved both on my portfolio and my marketing tactics. This is around the time that I developed my network method, which is the method that I use to query art director, which I teach in my art business bootcamp. And I started seeing some really good results with that method, and everything kind of started happening right there after my second book. So the next book contract that I got was this little one right here, Hoopla with Unicorn. And this is a board book, all cardboard. It's pretty heavy, it's pretty hefty, but there's only like 6 pages. And this was with Igloo Books. It's also, interestingly, a mech book. So when we open this, we can slide up the horn of the unicorn. And at the back of the book, there are some hoops in cardboard that you can actually detach and then play like hoopla with the horn on it. Obviously, I never detached the hoops on my copy because I want to keep it all nice and clean. But yeah, this was a pretty interesting book to work on with the additional technical challenge. And at first, I have to say I was a little bit intimidated. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. But as it turns out, they had like templates. You know, they have engineers that develop these things. And so they sent me templates and I just had to put my artwork in the templates. So it wasn't all that difficult as I thought it might be. This was a really short and sweet project. There's only a few illustrations in there. And so it was done in like 3 weeks. It was very short and it was very well paid. It was absolutely a delight to work on. And about a month after that, I got a new book deal that came in through my agent this time. And it was a Christian book with a company called Living Grace. I actually don't have a copy of this one, so I'm going to insert an image from the internet somewhere on the screen. This was also a very short project. It was something like 8 illustrations to create, and it was also very well paid, so I accepted it. But to be honest, this was the first book that I got so far that I wasn't really in love with the script. The book is called Happy Jesus Birthday, and it's about these 2 siblings who are super excited about Christmas coming up, and they're making their list of gifts that they want, and then they get lectured by their mom about how Christmas is Jesus' birthday, and so they shouldn't be getting gifts. It should be about what they can do for Jesus because it's not their birthday, it's Jesus' birthday. I thought that kids weren't going to be like super happy about that. I thought it just wasn't like very fun for kids, and it did end up being kind of preachy. Not that there's anything wrong with the message, but it was a little bit forced. I felt like it was more focused on teaching that message than it was about just telling a fun stories for the kids, and I didn't think the kids would really enjoy that book as much. And I didn't enjoy that much working on it either. Like, it took me about a month to do, and I tried to make it a bit more fun by adding some nice elements in there. I made sure to include a dog in every single page, even though it wasn't on the script. And so I tried to make the best out of it, but you know, in the end, it just wasn't that terribly exciting for me, and I don't think that it's my best work. Because of that, I didn't end up being able to use this in my portfolio. For the longest time, I didn't even talk about the fact that I made this book. I was a little bit embarrassed about it. It's not anywhere in my portfolio. I'm not mentioning it anywhere. And so it kind of ended up being one of those projects that I exchanged my time for money, but then the project itself didn't end up helping me pursue my bigger career goals, if that makes sense. It was a one and done, and it didn't help me in the big picture. And so this is the first time that I really started to consider how it's important for me to start choosing my projects more carefully, that it doesn't have to be just all about if it's well paid or not. There's more than that, and having a good project to put in my portfolio to be able to get more work, something that I'm excited to work on so that I can make my very best work, that's also just as important. And so with that said, I ended up going into an entirely different direction for my next book. It's the first time that I work with a self-published author for this little book here, Margot et Clémence, Le Dodo. Another one in French language, so this was with an author from Quebec, but there's actually an English version of this book available as well. This was my first book with a self-published author. Up until that point, I had really been focused on working with publisher, and I do enjoy that a lot. But fresh off the heels of the last one, I was ready for something new, and when this author approached me, I really enjoyed the script, and she was very serious about it and had a reasonable budget, and so I was happy to jump in that one. Working with a self-published author is very different. She didn't have much experience, so there was a lot of explanation and education that went into it. I had to spend a much longer amount of time explaining to her how things work, simple things like licensing and printing and all of these things. But she was very serious about the project, and she was very dedicated to making it work. She was very hardworking, and this project, as far as I know, is a big success. It's in a bunch of bookstores all over Quebec, all over Canada. It was a very pleasant experience. She also let me experiment a little bit with the style in this one. This is something that I requested. I wanted to do a little bit more of textures and a bit less of vector. I used to do mostly vector, and so this time I asked her and she let me experiment with that, and so I did all of these pages that were a lot more textured, and I had a lot of fun with that. In fact, I enjoyed it so much that it was kind of the beginning of me getting the seed planted in my mind that I really wanted to change my style a little bit, and this will continue on. A little bit after that, I got another book contract through my agent, and this one was Do Not Give Up, which I think is my favorite book that I ever worked on. It is a book of puns with food items. It is so cute, and it was also actually my absolute best paid project yet. This was with the publisher Source Books. There are 24 pages in this book as well, but all of the pages are like this with text on the left, and so it was only 12 single page illustrations, and as you can see, they are very simple. There's no really background to speak of. They are very simple and cute, and so this didn't take all that much time, and it was paid $10,000. They also gave me a very generous deadline, and so I took my time. I redid the thumbnails like a million times. I really put so much effort into that book because they gave me the budget and the time to give me the luxury to do that. And so with all of that, it turned out to be, I think, my best book yet. It's just such a nice project. I adored working on it, and I made a whole video explaining my entire process for that book. You can check that out. A little bit after that, I work with another self-published author. Now, I actually get contacted by self-published authors all the time, like several times per week sometimes, but I very rarely take up these projects because, you know, I have quite high rates that allow me to pay for all of my bills. I insist on that. And rare are the self-published authors that can actually afford that. I also choose my scripts now for what I really want to do. So it's really rare that a project has both of those things. But with this author, that was the case. He sent me a very nice script called Veronica and the Veggie Fairy. And when I quoted him $6,000 for 12 pages, he didn't blink an eye. He was completely fine with that. So I was like, awesome, let's do it. So we went ahead with that project, and at that time I was really itching to get away from my vector style and try something else. I wanted to experiment with watercolors and go back to traditional and all of that stuff. And that would have been a hard sell with a publisher. They see your signature style from your portfolio and they want the same. They hire you for your style. But with a self-published author, I asked him if he was okay with me experimenting, and he was fine with it, and so I went ahead with that. I had a lot of fun creating this book, and I really gave it my 200%. Because of that, it did end up taking me a very long time, like twice as long as it would usually take me to do a book. I did the entire thing in watercolor and then adjusted digitally, painted some additional details digitally. I ended up busting my deadline by 2 months, but this author, thankfully, was really patient with me. I explained all of this. He was okay with it. He wasn't in any hurry. So he was very gracious with all of that, and in the end, I created something that I'm very, very proud of. I think this book turned out awesome. Unfortunately, at the end of the project, unexpectedly, the relationship broke down. It was at the very end when everything was finished and I had already sent all of my printing files, and he sent me back some proofs, you know, some books in the mail for me to see, and they were a disaster. I have never seen anything like this. I still have them somewhere. I wish I could show you, but they are already packed. Like you can see, I have my boxes right there. I really started packing because I'm moving in July, and so I don't know where I put them. Unfortunately, I can't show you, but the paper quality was atrocious. It was, you know, almost looked like normal printer paper. It was stapled. my trim lines were showing the guides that I only put in my low res preview, which means that he didn't use my final files. He sent my preview PDF to the printer. So that meant also that everything inside was all blurry and pixelated and just awful. Awful. I was honestly panicking and crying, especially when I read the attached letter that said that he had already sent this book to everyone and they all loved it. I was like, you did what? But I tried to calm myself down. I wrote him an email which explained all of the issues, that these were the wrong files, that the quality was not up to par, that, there were problems here. And unfortunately, he didn't take it well at all. He was very offended. He said that, I had accused him of making mistakes and taking him for an idiot and all of that stuff. And in the end, just completely broke off all contact. And so, that was really weird and disappointing, but these sorts of things happen. It was just so weird because I spent 4 months making this amazing book and I'm still really happy about it, but it just kind of ended up going nowhere, which is odd. I still got paid though. Unfortunately, with self-published authors, you never know what's gonna happen because with a real publisher, these are sorts of things that when they happen, you point out the problems and they react very professionally. You're like, this and this and this, we have problems. You raise the flag. They're like, oh my God, thank you for telling us. They want to make a good product and they know how to take these things in a really professional way. This guy, it was his project, his baby. He took it very seriously. He took it very personally and was very offended. So with self-published authors, you never know what's gonna happen. And lastly, the last publishing contract that I had was with my biggest publisher yet, Scholastic. I have grown up with Scholastic books. I was very, very excited when I heard from them. And this is an example of a relationship that grew over time because I first reached out to them in 2019. They liked my style but didn't have anything for me. At some point the next year, they had something for me. We did some tests. It didn't work out. So it was all very disappointing for a long time, but I kept trying, I followed up. I kept up the relationship and in the end, it ended up working out. After another follow-up in 2021, they had some work for me and it all worked out. So, the importance of follow-up, the importance of building relationships. Even if it's a no right now, it could be a yes for the future. And this is what happened here with Scholastic. I'm so happy that I got to work with them. They are amazing. They were so professional. Their budget was amazing. Everything was great with them. And this was a bit of a different publishing contract for me. It wasn't for a whole book. It was for book covers, but there were 19 of them. It was for a whole series. And so I did 19 book covers. It ended up being just as much work as doing a whole book. The publishing time for the project is also very long with Scholastic. I worked on this last year, but I still haven't received my proofs. I think it's not on sale yet. It's a very long project. They work on it sometimes years ahead of time. And so one day I will receive my proofs and I will be happy to show you. In the meantime, have some previews. These are some of the covers that I worked on for Scholastics. So this is my publishing career to date over the last 4 years. I really grew so much, improved so much, learned so much in those 4 years. I started out knowing absolutely nothing and I learned everything on the go as I went. And now I would love to share all that I've learned with aspiring illustrators just like you to help you get your books on the shelves too. That feeling when you see your books in the bookstore is a feeling like no other, and I really want that for you too. I'm super excited to announce that in just 2 weeks I will launch a brand new little 10-day course just for picture book illustrators like you. It's called the Picture Book Portfolio Prompts Course, or the PPP. It will be entirely delivered by email, super convenient. It's a 10-day course, and every single day you will receive an email in your inbox full of tips and insider secrets and 3 original prompts per day for a total of 30 prompts to help you bring out your full potential and make amazing portfolio pieces. I'm putting all of my picture book knowledge into those 10 days with advice and inspiration to help you impress those art directors and get your own picture book career started. And best of all, I'm launching this course at a very special introductory price of only $27. It's 50% off from the full price, but even then, it is the cheapest course that I've ever offered, but the value in this is going to be amazing and life-changing. So the doors for this are opening in 2 weeks. If you're interested, make sure to sign up for the waiting list to make sure that you won't miss the opening and your 50% off price. This is the only time that the price will be this low during the pre-order, so you don't want to miss it. The link to that will be in the description below. But that's it for me today. Thank you so much for coming. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help our small channel grow. Thank you again for being here, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!